Hello, I'm Soycam, welcome back to a second channel video. One of the things I've just kind of learned to accept recently is the fact that I'm pretty passionate about a lot of things that most people don't care about, or in today's case, probably even know about. Because when it comes to exciting transport opportunities for a city, if such a sentence even makes sense to you, most people think about, metros. They're a great way to get around, you go underground, it's a really exciting thing, you pay very little. It's a great all-round system because it connects a city really well, right? But the truth is, even though undergrounds and metros are a popular choice, and a lot of them are being built, the more popular option, when it comes to Europe at least these days, seems to be something which doesn't even have a precise name, but in Germany and German-speaking countries, it's called the S-Bahn. That's where they're most prevalent. As you can see from this map, there's a lot in Germany alone, and Switzerland and Austria, of course, in the German-speaking parts, but it's also sometimes called an S-train, such as in Copenhagen, and for today's video, we'll just call them S-train style services, or S-trains to be simple, because there's a lot of these all across Europe being built, and currently, which have just finished being built, and you might be riding one without even realizing it. And in the same way as metros of Europe are kind of exciting to see all the differences, to see all of the S-trains of Europe, there's a lot of fun different ones that I figured I'd highlight and talk about in today's video, because we can talk about public transport for fun if we want to. Yeah, this is what we do apparently. But no, honestly, I think it is kind of interesting, such as the first example, because Paris has one of the most, most used S-train systems in the world. It's just not called an S-train system. In fact, if you've ever been to Paris, you know about this, because here is one of the busiest rail lines in a major city in the world. This is called the RER A. So again, it's an S-train basically, but it's called like the region. They've got a funny name for it because it's French, but basically, yeah, you can see looking at this map, kind of the characteristics of what an S-train is, because unlike a underground line, which has a lot of frequent stops along a city, with fairly small fare zones, in the case of a in the case of an S-Bahn line, you can see how there's like 5 different termini. There's one over here, one over here, just one up down there, one up there, one over here, and then a couple on this side. But then in the center, there's a central core which all the trains run through. So even though some trains are running from each of the termini to each of the termini, there's a big central core which is often underground, the most major part of the city, where there's much more frequent stops, and obviously there's more trains running. In fact, in this particular case of the RER-A, there's a lot of RER lines in France, but in this particular case, it's so busy that even though they have a train running every 2 minutes in that central core, that was still not enough capacity. It's a lot of people a day, but because of all the people using it every single day, they had to upgrade their trains. So there's double-decker trains on what is effectively a metro. One of the weirdest things because as it turns out, the busiest line is the one I first went on when I went to Paris. And yeah, just a fascinating fact about Paris, they have basically double-decker trains, but it's unlike normal double-decker trains, which are already quite a weird thing if you're in the UK or any country that doesn't have these. Because it's a metro-style service in the center, you can see how there's doors every again, very short distance. So they have lots and lots of stairs in these things. They're really wild to look at on the inside, and it was basically just them realizing, okay, we're running max length trains every 2 minutes. There's still too many people. Double-decker apparently, and that's their solution, which again, it's interesting that that many people are using them, and I think that's one of the biggest points of these are popular services. All of these, RER lines in France are significantly more used than the metros, because, they also charge more, they go to more places, and they're just in general the system that works for France. So yeah, even though the S-Bahn, you probably think of Germany, and they have a lot, significant number more, of these systems, it is worth noting, Paris is perhaps the most used network in the world. It's hard to really compare them because no city calls them S-Bahns. There's no real category. It's hard to even properly categorize them together. But another good example would be London, in my opinion, because, I guess besides Germany, we could talk about that. But when it comes to London, in my opinion, there are a lot of things being developed right now. They're not new metro lines. You might think, like, the Underground, it's 130 years old, but the last, metro line that opened, the Jubilee line, I believe, the one that's silver, if in case I got the name wrong on that one, but, the last one that opened, it's like, oh yeah, that was last, century. So what's the deal with that? And the truth is, metros don't meet the need of London right now. It's the biggest city in Western Europe / the EU / however you want to define Europe, but it's one of the biggest cities in this part of the world. And yeah, honestly, metros don't do the job anymore. So what they've decided is to open something called Crossrail or the Elizabeth line or whatever you want to call it. Side note, really awkwardly sized image right here, right? But yeah, you can see how same thing, multiple termini on each end, with a big central section in the middle, which can be used like a metro. It works like it's an underground line to relieve congestion in the center, while also allowing people to go from each of the ends to the other one. And the clever thing about this is that at each of the ends, it's only a train every half an hour, but if you have a train every half an hour from Reading and Shenfield and Abbeywood and, Terminal 5 at Heathrow, Terminal 4, that means in the central section, every half an hour, 5 different trains coming through. That means you get a train every 6 minutes, assuming I didn't do the maths horribly wrong there. But you see the basic point. They're like, oh yeah, just one train every half an hour from each of these places adds up to a lot of capacity in the center, which means it works like a metro while also working like a regional. It's a really good cross of both, and it also allows, profitable stuff, and also allows new suburbs to be opened up, which makes, in this case, like Reading basically a suburb of London, makes places like Harold Wood's basically a suburb of London. I've never heard of Harold Wood. It's a weird name for a place. And yeah, it also does a lot of other cool stuff, like actually hooks up the airports to central London in a reasonable way. But yeah, Crossrail, Elizabeth Line, pretty cool thing. But also, you might think like, oh yeah, well that's one thing they're opening, and I know there's going to be another one sometime soon. But also in the UK, there's the Thameslink. So Thameslink is, fun fact, the train I was on when I lost my bag with all my stuff with the 2000. I was actually recording for this video, because I wanted to show off, like, this is what an S-Bahn style train looks like on the inside. So you can see the very moment I lost my stuff. It sure is great looking at that on camera. That sure does not sting me. But anyway, or you can see the moments before it was lost, and then the moment it was lost and the guy's looking at it. But anyway, so basically, the Thameslink service is an S-Bahn style service. It's been highly invested in. If you've been on it, you've probably seen that in some way. And it's basically the same thing. We're like, oh yeah, all the way out in, like any of these weird branches, like at Sevenoaks or at Littlehampton, there's only a train every half hour. At Bedford, I think it's every 12 minutes. At Brighton, I think it's something similar, like 5 or 6 trains now. But it means that through the centre, 24 trains or something are going, taking people from London Bridge to East Croydon or to, up to, all the central core stations. And it means there is basically an underground line while also better connecting places like Luton or places like Three Bridges or places like Sevenoaks or places like Horsham. By the way, there's a place called Caterham, but all these places are better linked into London while also adding to that metro style service. It's kind of like a best of both worlds system, and that's why they seem to be so popular. So yeah, there you go. There's a fun fact. For this, I had a plan to make this video, and it did involve going on one of those things because I was going to Gatwick at the time. Because also, the reason this is also so widely used, it's worth noting, is it goes through 2 of London's airports. London's airports are very busy. It connects a lot of places that kind of need to be connected at a very fast speed. It goes 100 miles an hour. It's faster than taking the car, and it's also a lot cheaper in most cases, even though they charge more than a usual metro style ticket. It's a weird mixture of like train and metro kind of merging together into one, and it's a clever thing in that way. But yeah, so if we're going to be talking about S-Bahns, I feel like we got to talk about Germany, because the term S-Bahn or S-Train comes from Germany. So, fun fact, did you know S-Bahn is actually the German word for S-Train? Boom! And the actual origin of it is kind of odd, but it mostly means Stadtbahn, but there's no official meaning. But we'll just take it to mean city train. It's a train that goes through a city, and yeah, if you look at all of these maps, you can see how, like, even within Germany, there's no real consistent definition, and that's why it's so hard to probably categorize something as an S-train. Like, looking within one country of one definition, with one logo even, this S, logo, is the iconic S-Bahn logo, but you can see just how different all of these networks look to one another. Like the one for Rhine-Main is a very clear, like, spiderweb network. The one for Magdeburg looks like it's just one line. Like, can you even call that anything? In Berlin, it's a mess, partly because the city was divided into East and West. Fun fact about that is that, like, because the East Germans wanted to keep their claim on the lines, they ran a lot of trains into West Germany. There were, like, border checks at East and West Germany. There was a weird thing. How the public transport functioned in Germany during the division is one of the craziest things, in my opinion. The fact that there is, uniquely enough to me, there's a ring line in Germany, but instead of just calling it a ring line, it's called the Ringbahn, the ring train. There's a lot of, like, quirky things about Berlin's transport, but because Berlin is just one city in the mega country that is Germany, I wanted to talk about the more interesting one to me, which is the Rhine-Ruhr region. So the entire Rhine-Ruhr region, which is one of the most populated parts of Germany, has one just linked-in S-Bahn network. So you can see just the scale of this on the map of Germany, how big that network is. And I think even if we use Google's like built-in transit thing, so we click on an S-Bahn station just up here somewhere, yeah, let's just click on this. See if it will give us the entire thing. There you can see. This is okay. So it's a bit of a mess, but you can see how, like, oh yeah, this is what the S-Bahn network looks like. It's pretty darn strange. And if we look at just a precise map, in case that's not good enough for you, here's what it looks like between Dortmund and Dusseldorf. You can take a city train across. It's kind of like taking an underground train, except instead of taking you across your own city, it takes you across Dortmund or Essen or Wuppertal or Düsseldorf across multiple different cities. And you might think, like, what's the difference between just taking a train to two cities and taking an S-Bahn? Well, in this case, it's a lot cheaper. I think it's only like, like 7 or 10 euros or something to go from two fairly far away cities, like an hour apart. But the other exciting thing is it's a fairly, fairly frequent frequency, a fairly often frequency, a fairly, that sentence is redundant, but you get the point. It's that thing entirely. Wow, isn't that kind of crazy that you can just take a train all the way from Cologne all the way up here into Essen? It is. There are trains. It's a train network that goes across all these different cities. It's a weird thing, and it's a thing you find in Germany, as it turns out, in the Rhine-Ruhr region. It's one of the things that makes this, in my opinion, such a connected area, where it's just, again, looking at the map of roads alone, kind of weird. Looking at the map of, rail links between them, super, super connected. It's just one of the most densely hooked up areas. It feels a bit like a Tokyo that's split up into multiple different places. But this shows, in my opinion, the beauty of what an S-Bahn network can do for a city, because as opposed to just having a big underground system, which makes which connects a big place together. So, a good example of something like that would be, I don't know, any major network, let's just say Tokyo, for instance, if you really want to. Tokyo is just a bit, I know it's technically 23 cities, but it's just a big area all connected into one. Any place with a huge underground network, it just connects everywhere into one place, whereas S-Bahns kind of connect multiple cities, or a city with lots of smaller towns, together. And in this case, there is 5 or 6 big cities, but then there's lots of fairly small towns that are connected into that main town on a regular enough basis that they have linked economies. And it's a weird thing, but it seems to make sense on the economic level as well as on every other level. And yeah, just this region in Germany is just, it's crazy to look at. It feels like Japan density, and I'm sure if you counted all the cities together, it would be one of the most populated cities in the world. Megacities are something you see mostly in the context of China, but there's basically one over here in Germany with so many interesting facts, like, oh, did you know in Wuppertal, for instance, they have I want to say they have one of the weirdest transport systems in the world. Alongside the S-Bahn, they have like hanging trams, I want to say. Yeah, it's a monorail that goes above the thing, so they're like hanging tramways. It's the weirdest thing. They built it as like this is what the future will look like, and now it's just a weird thing that goes over the river. So yeah, fun facts of Toycat. Maybe from over here we can see an actual tram on it. No, we can't. But yeah, you can see weird things all over the place, and that's Germany right there. They've got some S-Bahns too. So we've spoken about Germany, France, the UK, the 3 largest countries in Europe. What about other countries? I mean, only if there's S-Bahns in Germany and I guess also in other countries, that's not very many. That's 3 so far. So also worth noting, in Austria they're called S-Bahns. There's the Vienna S-Bahn. There's also the Salzburg S-Bahn, and you know how I love borders. This is a train which crosses the border into Germany. So interestingly enough, you can see how the same S-Bahn network goes through Salzburg into Germany, and then right next to going back into Austria. Kind of a weird thing, you can commute from Germany into Austria, and the line was set up deliberately for that, because it's a Euro region where, like, oh yeah, a lot of commuters in Salzburg do live in Germany, and some people live in Salzburg to commute to Munich, and yeah, you can now probably do that. It's also worth noting that I believe in Basel, it's the exact same thing, or Basel, as a lot of German-speaking subscribers have been asking me to say, but you can see how it's the exact same thing. Like, oh yeah, some of their S-Bahn network just goes into Germany. Not much of it, but some of it does. Look, there's an S-Bahn. You can take the public transport from Switzerland into Germany. Sure, that's kind of cool. Same with Austria. The 3 countries are very much linked by their S-Bahns, which all are called the same thing, because they are German-speaking countries. Asterisks when it comes to Switzerland. So yeah, also worth noting, Denmark has a S-train system, and they're the only country to actually call it S-train. So here is a map of their network. You can see the exact same thing happening. It's a very big central core, and then it's lots of different off-branches. This is actually an English translated map, which is kind of funny in my opinion, like, oh, Copenhagen Head Train Barn, or, looking at all the stations, they're kind of funnily named in my opinion. But it's the exact same thing, and they're the only place to actually just call it an S-train system. So, fun fact, Copenhagen, however you want to say that whole thing, has an S-train network, and it does the same kind of clever thing. There is a central core of the city. You can see it makes sense just geographically speaking. This place right here, a lot of people are going to want to go up and down there, have an S-train system set up. That way you can also get a bunch of people in and out of the city, while also getting people around the city. Kind of a clever thing. Is this place really called Pete's Explosion Road? I just spotted that one right now. But, yeah, so I love transliteration maps, by the way. Some of my favorite things. Reputation Park. That's a nice name for a place. I want to go to Reputation Park now. You know what? This is basically tourism right here. Command Doors. Odd. New Ellie's Mountain. Anyway, so with that said, I could stare at this map all day, but we shouldn't. We should move on to the last system that even tries to call itself an S-Bahn, because we have Czechia, or as you know, a lot of people don't like Google Maps and don't like the fact that it is a legitimate English name and say, no, it's going to be the Czech Republic to me. No one ever said you couldn't call it the Czech Republic. It's just there's a new shorthand name, and you know, you don't have to call the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland the UK. It's fine with me if you call it the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It's just, you know, it's a short name. But yeah, so in Czechia, yeah, that's like drama response right there. Like, this is the closest thing gets drama on this channel. Like, ooh, Soycat called it Czechia that whole video, but I do not approve of him. Which English-speaking people is he speaking to? But yeah, so in Prague, there is an S-train network. It's just called the Eska. It's called the Eska because S, that's how you roughly say S in, you know, Czech. That's at least the belief I have. So yeah, it looks kind of like the S-Bahn logo from Germany, but it's not. And yeah, you can see there's a lot of overlap. The S1, the S2, the S, etc. all go through that same place. And yeah, boom, that's a thing. Oh, another thing I should mention, every place that calls it an S network, S-Bahn or an S-train, calls them S1, S2, S3, etc. Whereas personally, and you know, in France they call them, what, the REA, you know, the REA A, B, C, D, etc. I don't know if I'll, you know, D1, B3, etc. I don't like any of those names. I kind of like just, you know, calling them their own, like, little fun things. You know, even though I don't like the name Elizabeth Line in London, at least it's something unique. Like, oh yeah, it's a train you take from place to place. It's a metro thing mixed with, you know, like, at least giving it a unique name I've always preferred as cool being like, oh yeah, this is Underground Line 1. You are on Underground Line A, B, to 34. Yeah, no, personally, I don't like that. But yeah, so that's Prague's Eska network. Let's move on finally, just to talk about some few other things, because yeah, those are all the places that have S-trains, or things that are basically S-trains but aren't called S-trains because they're S-train style things. So let's talk about countries. First of all, I want to mention, because I mentioned Glasgow as having the cutest underground network, Dublin has not an underground network. It has kind of an S-train network in that it has the same, again, if you look on a map, same kind of thing. If you look at the urban, so we click on the station, see the transit map, there's like an urban core to the city, which is served by the Dart. You can see how, like, right here, a lot of people go in and out via the Dart, and the Dart, I would say, in the British Isles, or in Europe at least, might be one of the ugliest, trains. Like, you know how, like, oh, cute metro from before. This is just, in my opinion, ugly train. Sorry. I mean, I'm sure even Irish people must agree, like, ooh, yeah, that is a garish green, that is not a nice shape. Is this what we've come to, just judging trains by their appearance, you know? Hashtag not my train or something like that. Anyway, so with that said, we also have a few other systems around the world are kind of S-train based. So I mentioned, oh yeah, so S-trains are a really big thing in Europe, kind of only mentioned a few cities. The truth is, because they're so hard to define, a lot of things like this are happening all over the place, such as in Auckland, New Zealand, such as in Philadelphia. But there are a few systems like this that already exist. They just never call themselves S-trains because they have no reason to. And the biggest example that I always saw when I was in New York is the Long Island Railroad. So because New York has the most unique geography in the world, especially when it comes to Long Island, you can see how this has a very clear place for that to be. But you can see, oh yeah, so there's one clear, well, there's a few termini, but there's one clear end termini that splits off more and more and more as you go further out. The further out you go, the less frequent the trains, all the way out to over here where, like, you know, it takes 3.5 hours to get there. There's going to be a train every hour or two. And yeah, it's just a fact you can expect. And I find that interesting personally, that like, oh yeah, America's basically had this for quite some time now. And yeah, I think it is a successful way to link suburbs into a city, to allow a city to grow with suburbs. Is that a good thing? Are suburbs a good thing? Is linking cities a good thing? You know, maybe you don't like transport at all. Maybe people should stay exactly where they are right now. Stay put, you know? I like where it is right now. I intend to move like 5 meters that way to my bed on foot. I don't need no fancy trains, which probably hurt the environment. Let me know your opinions down below. You know, again, I'm at the level now where it's like, let's just have a bit of fun with this. So someone recently made a comment like, oh yeah, aren't you concerned all the flying is bad for the environment? And I wanted to mention, just real quick, that there's two ways you can see your impact on anything, and I think the plane argument is the best way to talk about this one. So yeah, we're talking about planes. It's an S-train video. Whatever. What are you going to do about it? So when it comes to air travel, in my opinion, when you're booking a seat on a plane, as an individual at least, you're booking an additional seat that makes the plane more efficient per person, in my opinion. You know, like your weight added to the plane is no difference. There's like 40 tons of fuel, there's like 100 tons of cargo, and how much does a passenger weigh? It's a very small amount. You know, maybe you want to say like, oh, that additional amount. But realistically, you're taking a seat that would otherwise be empty. You're improving air travel. On the long scale, you might say, well, every little helps, and you're going to increase the demand for air travel, which increases the number of planes that fly, which, there you go, you've killed the environment, so I can't use single-handedly. But I just want to mention, like, okay, but the truth is, air travel is a thing, not necessity, but it will become more of a necessity in a globalized world where you want trade to happen and increase in incomes and all the other various varieties of things that come with globalization, which I think most people who are in favor of the environment also do quite like. The more people who travel, the more efficient planes get. The more planes that are being bought, the more efficient each one can be. Every new generation of planes, which is like every 10, 15 years, is like 20% more efficient than the last. We're eventually going to have electric planes, which are entirely rechargeable. There's even the planes that are being tested right now that have no moving parts. It's like magnet-based. That stuff happens because there's a demand. If air travel was just like, oh yeah, there's a once-a-week flight from London to New York, and there's a once-a-month flight from London to Singapore, and that's all the flights that we have in Europe right now, sir. Otherwise, horse and carriage or the train, please. It's like, that's not more efficient, because then you just don't go places you want or need to go. And also, there's the fact, like, again, I think increasing the demand for stuff like this is genuinely how you reduce it. It sounds absurd, but to try and get in the way of human nature, you know, I think altering it slightly, like throwing a little nudge, like a little tax on there or whatever, like we already have a huge one off in the UK. Every time there's a huge... It's like, I want to say it's £74 every long-haul flight I take, right in the UK government right there. You can make nudges, and that's a good thing. You know, that's what taxes are good for. I think taxes to disincentivize behavior that is objectively bad for the world, to fix moral hazards, etc., is a good thing. But if you want to make something better, generally you need someone to innovate and make it better. You can't just say, no one can do that because it's bad right now. Things get better with demand. And a good example of that would be the S-train systems. If no one uses them, then they're unprofitable, have to be dug up. Lots of people use them. Oh, you have to make faster services, more efficient ones. Less people are going in the cars, and it's a good thing in general. Boom, brought it back around to S-trains and public transport. I don't know what this video was. I recorded this like 1:30 because I was just like, you know what? I really want to talk about S-trains. And yeah, I've been meaning to make this one for quite a while. But yeah, we're going to leave the public transport thing behind probably. Off this video. I just kind of like, you know, I like the underground video. I like this one. And we'll go back to talking about geography fairly soon, I hope, at least. Who knows for sure, though, because second channel, don't care. Hey, goodbye.